Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening. Welcome to Stamp Talks presented by the Royal Philatelic Society of Canada. Today we have Arnie Janson with us, who will be speaking to us about forgeries, fakes, counterfeits, reproductions, and fantasy stamps. Arnie is a retired engineer and former member of both the Burlington and Hamilton stamp clubs. His collecting passion is for Canadian on-cover and used varieties, especially constant plate varieties on the Victorian issues. Arnie is currently a member of the Brantford, Ontario Stamp Club. We would like to thank Longley Auctions, our sponsor for Stamp Talks Stamp Panels. Longley Auctions is a public auction firm specializing in selling Canadian postal history, large worldwide collections, stamps, postcards, and philatelic literature. So be sure to check out longleyauctions.com. And we are going to have our land acknowledgement very shortly. Very, very shortly. It's coming.
Like many other organizations in Canada, the Board of Directors of the Royal Philatelic Society of Canada has chosen to acknowledge Indigenous peoples in Canada with the following statement. As a step towards reconciliation, the RPSC acknowledges that our national office in Toronto stands on the traditional territory of many First Nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Our national office is also covered by Treaty 13 and the Williams Treaties. Furthermore, we acknowledge that Indigenous peoples did not give up the lands that they had been on for thousands of years that now constitute Canada. We also acknowledge that Europeans did not discover Canada or arrive on an uninhabited land. The RPSC acknowledges that Canada is covered by many treaties and modern lands, resources, and self-government agreements with Indigenous peoples, and that the provisions of many of these arrangements remain unfulfilled. The RPSC further acknowledges that many Indigenous peoples in Canada have not had their rights fully recognized and implemented according to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. The RPSC pledges to promote recognition and knowledge of Indigenous peoples in Canada and elsewhere and their cultures through philately. We will also work towards building positive relationships with Indigenous peoples in Canada.
Thanks, Greg. Well, without further ado, take it away, Arnie.
Okay, let me share my screen. And go to presentation mode. Okay, thank you all for joining. And thank you, Longley Auctions, for supporting these stamp talks. Forgeries, fakes, counterfeits, reproductions. We'll talk first about what the definitions for each of them, and then we'll look at them in fakes, forgeries, counterfeits, reproductions, and the last section will be some miscellaneous. And yes, I am in Antigua right now. So first of all, the definition from Ken Pugh's publication in 2001, a forgery with a G there, unauthorized reproduction of a genuine stamp or cover with the express interest of defrauding the collector, usually made from virgin material. There's G's along in here. Okay. Counterfeits, those are stamps produced to defraud Canada Post or whatever postal authority, not necessarily Canadian, made for use in the mail, not targeted collectors. Fakes, that's the one that's hardest to separate from forgeries and fakes. We know counterfeits are pretty easy. Fakes, those start with an actual stamp as opposed to the virgin material for a forgery. An actual stamp that's been fraudulently altered. Cancellations, surcharges, overprints, perforations, all these kind are fakes. We'll look at facsimiles, reproduction, reprints. Those are copies, but they're not intended to defraud anyone. They're so bad as a copy that anybody should recognize. Like, for example, as an illustration in an album. There are philatelic forgeries. Forgeries that are made simply to target the forgery collecting market. Philatelic counterfeit, again, you don't want to defraud Canada Post, but you want to make a philatelic item. Bogus, of course, anything that never existed in genuine form, and fantasies. Bogus stamps made by a fictitious postal authority. We're going to look at 3 different examples about those particularly. So first, part 1, the fakes. Here's a look at 7 different examples. In the first column, and another 6 more. These are all examples that we'll be looking at. Perforated covers, everything, all kinds of these ones. And this is probably the most important part of the presentation. First ones are really straightforward. The number 2, which has been reperforated to make it look like the more expensive number 13. It's on laid paper while number 13 is on wolf paper. And if we look at it closely, here's another reperforated one. And this one's even very, very obvious. You can see down here the perforations in the bottom these are genuine and these are fake. It's about as obvious a reperforation as you can find. This one comes with a certificate that it's been reperforated. Why would someone would reperforate this? I'm not sure, but it has been reperforated on the side. So watch out for those. This is an interesting one. This is the major re-entry from position 34 of the 3-penny Beaver. We're going to look at the stamp first carefully. It has the doubling down here, or the tripling actually, on both sides. And we see some extra doubling down here in the bottom ovals. So we know this is position 34. When we go back to the image from Ken Kershaw on the website on reentries.com, we'll see the same doubling or tripling under the 3s on both sides. And we'll see the same doubling of the margins or ovals at the bottom. So the stamp is genuine, position 34. But the cover, let's look at that cover more carefully. Here we see, what do we see here? We see some cancel on the cover that doesn't extend onto the stamp. And similarly, we have a cancel here, an oval, a target cancel, that one would have expected to also reach the cover. And then over here, we have some kind of ink marking. Well, that should also have gone onto the cover. So obviously it's very clear. The stamp is genuine, but it's been put on a cover that it didn't go through the mail on that cover. It went through the mail on some other cover and then was glued onto this one. So here's another interesting one. Here's a number 3, the 12-penny Queen Victoria. Is it a genuine cover or is it fake? This was in lot 7 in Eastern's auction from last June. And here's their description. 1852 folded cover from the cover, not letter, folded cover from the Kennedy Correspondence. Prepaid from Montreal to New York, sealed tear at the foot. Clear Montreal double arc exchange dispatch. Manuscript rated 1 shilling. With ARC Canada and paid border exchange office. Everything looks genuine. A genuine used 12-penny black on laid paper has been added, but did not originate on this stampless cover. According to the latest opinion by Green Foundation. Displaying 3 large margins, irregular frame, pencil sign dot. Unit rate is 80,000 for a fine used single estimate. Oh, and I should note that any stamp cover that you see in this presentation is in the personal collection. So as is this one. So let's look at this a little more carefully. Here we do see the cover. Wonderful. Here's the target cancel. It ties the cancel. The cancel ties that stamp wonderfully to the cover. Let's look at that stamp quickly. If we look on this side here, what are we going to see? We're going to see some doubling of the outer frame line here, and some doubling of the inner frame line there. If we look down here, we're going to see more doubling. And we're going to see a short transfer in the corner. I sent this off to Dr. Jim Watt, and his reply is very, very short and sweet. Dear Arnie, your stamp is left pane plate position 95. So we know the stamp is 100% genuine. There's no question about that. Is the cover genuine? That's really where we're looking at. So it is official Bank of Montreal correspondence from the back to D.S. Kennedy on the front. So what else is it? Kirby and Arfkin did a fabulous paper in 2009 that lists all 6 genuine single usage 12-penny blacks to the US. Of those 6, including the one that's in the Royal Collection in the UK, Of those 6, 4 of them are to D.S. Kennedy. The hand stamps here that we see are genuine, the same as another genuine 12-penny cover from Montreal to New York. It's one of the other 2 covers. There's 2 that were 4 to Kennedy, 2 to others. So 2003, when they reviewed it and gave it a negative review, a false, fake cover certificate, they did not have the benefit of the 2009 paper. Their certificate says there's traces of earlier cancel. So obviously that was something that they felt was a factor in why this was not genuine. There were these traces of an earlier cancel on their 2003 certificate. When they reissued that certificate in 2024, they removed that statement. There are no traces of an earlier cancel. And it is a cover, so we can understand from the postage, yes, it's not a single folded letter. Where there was an enclosure, it would be heavier than just a single sheet of paper. This 1 shilling manuscript appears to tie the stamp to the cover, and that's perhaps the most interesting facet here. Here we are looking at this part of the cancel, and when we zoom in here, it does almost look like this pen cancel that came up here, came right on and caught just the margin of this stamp. If that's the case, well, that makes it an interesting possibility. That adds the options. So the key, though, in terms of opposed, why the 1 shilling manuscript? The postage should be 20 cents. It should have said 20 cents and a 12-penny black. That's the 12-penny black gets it to the border, and the 20 cents gets it from the border to New York. That was the proper postage at the time. Hypothesis? Well, 1 shilling is equivalent to 20 cents in 1852. Did the postmaster put 1 shilling instead of 20 cents? Because that's what the sender paid him. Whoever came up and paid it probably gave him 1 shilling and not 20 US cents. Maybe it was this postmaster's assistant, or perhaps because he didn't have a paid 20 cents hand stamp. So there's some options, but bottom line is it shouldn't have been there with the 1 shilling. It should have been 20 cents. Okay, we can talk about it if there's any. I'm keen to hear any comments on that at the end, but we'll continue now with another fake money letter marking. These are 3 bogus money letters from an Eastern auction in 2024. One from Queenston, one from Lindsay, and one from a place I've never heard of. It's called St. Radford. I think we all know what that was supposed to be. That was supposed to be Stratford, and we'll see it here. So these are fake money letter cancels. Now, interestingly, there's 2 of them from 1864 and 1867. But money letters were replaced with registration on May 1st of 1855. So there's no way a postmaster is, these many years later, using the wrong hand stamp. Someone was playing games and putting these as money letters when they definitely weren't. Okay, but the third one is an interesting one. Here it is here. When we look at money letters, they were introduced in 1831. Boggs classifies them. Here they are, RH1 to RH6. Those are the 6. And when I learned about this, I said, oh, that's not a bad challenge. I think I can collect one of each of those and have a nice little collection. Yes, this money letter is very, very similar to the Type 5 because it's a sans serif font, but it's a little bit different too. So now this is Boggs' book, and I have to say special thanks to Hugo Shame for providing the reference and the scan. But now we're going to go on to this money letter. This is the one from Queenston from 1840, February 19th. Keep that date in mind. Okay, money letter, Queenston, paying 1 and 9. 1 and 9 would be a triple weight letter for the 61 to 99, 61 to 100 miles, 7 cents per sheet of paper. So this would have been 1 shilling 9 is 3 ounces. So three sheets of paper, the equivalent thereof. And it's to the Registrar Court Probate. Interesting there. On the back, it's received presumably on the February 20th, because it was mailed on the 19th. Received on the 20th. Alex, someone's written in hand, Alex Hamilton, Esquire of Queenston, and they will, and then entered, and it looks like somebody's initial. So obviously, Alexander Hamilton died on the 19th of February, 1839. So it looks like the trustee had to, within 1 year of the person's death, submit to the courts that whatever information had to be required, whether or not it was money or the will or whatever it is, had to be submitted within 1 year of the death. So who was this Alexander Hamilton? Fourth son of Robert and Catherine. Robert, very successful businessman. He made his money transporting stuff around Niagara Falls, from Lake Erie down to Lake Ontario. When he died, he was obviously a lot of land in the area. Who was Catherine, his wife? St. Catherine's is possibly named after. There's some theories as to who St. Catherine's was named after, and Catherine Hamilton is one of them. Who was Alexander? Fourth, he served actively in the War of 1812. He was the mayor, Queenston, first sheriff, and the postmaster. And here we have a letter to him in Chippewa, 3rd of August, 1826. Now, the story doesn't end here, though. And there's when Willowbank, that's the Hamilton residence. That's from a picture from Google Earth, a recent picture. But who was this? Why is he important? As part of the Upper Canada Rebellion in 1839, or 1838, sorry, James Monroe led some American patriots across the Niagara River. They had been told that when they get here, they would find lots of Canadian support. Support to defeat the British and free the Canadians from the British tyranny. They attacked some British forces in a tavern. 31 were captured. They didn't get the support they were expecting. Condemned to death. Sentences were commuted. They were transported to Van Diemen's Land. About 100 total were captured in various conflicts with the British soldiers. But in this case, one had to be hanged as a deterrent. When the executioner failed to appear to carry out the sentence of death on James Monroe, one of the leaders of the raid, Hamilton performed it himself on July 30th, having arranged as an act of kindness that Monroe drop 18 feet before the rope snapped his neck. He was later complimented by the government for the cool and firm manner in which the execution was performed. So here we have a postmaster who also served as an executioner. On July 30th, he, James Monroe, professed his faith in God, received in the Catholic Church, baptized, and executed. Buried in an another fake. Large queen, and just a minute, I have to, just a minute. Okay. Large fake. In this case, it is with fake laid paper lines. It looks pretty good. Well, but people who know the laid paper lines know this is not right. And so it's a fake. It's an important difference there. Here we're now looking at some more fakes. These are fake overprints with a 1 cent blue overprint on 1/3 of the 3 cent carmine, Port Hood provisionals. And here we have the 2 cent violet on 2/3 of the 3 cent carmine. So those are the overprints. They're both fakes. Here's the genuine. The 3 Port Hood provisional with the 2 cent overprint, 88C. We look at it closely here. We have the stamp again with the Port Hood CDS or split ring. And if we compare the two, this is all proof that it is genuine. If we now look at the overprints, On the left, we have the fake. On the right, we have the genuine. We can see that there's a difference in height and the shape of the two, especially when it comes down to the bottom here, where we see a real curly Q on the bottom leg of the two, and it's just height. So clearly, it is a fake. And now we're going to look at more fake markings. The SS normally would stand for a steamship, and this would be the steamship of River Denis in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. But SS River Denis, beware fake consolations. There's a whole story about this available at Postal History Corner Blogspot. Bottom line, and the headline in the story is here. Here's an example of one of the addresses mailed to the SS River Denis, but it really stands for the South Side River Denis or Denis. And there's a complete, wonderful article to read about the town that became a boat, obviously. The south side of River Denis became the steamship River Denis. And so there's a wonderful information if anyone's interested in reading about these. There's a reference, and the paqueboat cancels. Some people who like paqueboat cancels, this could be very, very important. But this is clearly a fake. It was genuine at one point, and it's been altered to make it a fake. Here we have another fake. And that one's pretty hard to tell. When you look at it from the back, boy, does it look good. Except it's been expertly rebacked. And it would probably show up in fluid, but I didn't have that fluid when I took this picture. I should have done it in fluid and we've been able to see it. But otherwise, it looks pretty good. If you could easily be fooled if you didn't look at it in fluid. Here we have another imperf single, fake. This is an interesting because it's as an imperf, there are imperf pairs listed in the unit trade. I was particularly intrigued by this bottom corner, this what appears to be some doubling here and some doubling here. Is that a re-entry in particular? Well, when I looked at it here and looked at it close and got a nice close-up view of this, what did I notice? I think you may have already noticed it too. There are two notches in the side here. And that spacing matches perf 12 notches spacing precisely. So it's obviously clearly that this was a perforated stamp and someone has just carefully trimmed the perfs off of it. Here's another one, just recently acquired. Again, it looks, there's the stamp, the cancel on the cover and the cancel on the stamp match. So there's no disputing that the stamp, it was on the cover when it was mailed. But is it a genuine imperf stamp? Or is it, and I think in order of decreasing probability, the highest probability, I think, is that this is just a trimmed booklet single, because the booklet singles from the top right corner of the booklet would have two straight edges, and you just trimmed this one very close. There's another possibility. It could also be the sheet margin stamp, trimmed again, or it could be a genuine imperf single, but I think of these three options, that's probably the least likely. And it's probably been created because it's a Toronto advertising cover for the pianos in Toronto, but it's used in Nova Scotia, so it's very clearly likely philatelic. And if it's philatelic, it doesn't pass the smell test as being genuine. So there's another imperf single on cover. You may see other ones too like that. Here we have a half cent King George V scroll. Half cent scrolls? Was that stamp ever issued? Here we do see, looks like some perforations up at the top, but there's a nice postage due stamp. Obviously, these are not genuine stamps. They are the postal stationery cutouts. So someone took some cutouts from postal stationery, glued them on to make up a 1 cent rate, to make up the total 3 cents. Canada Post said, nope, these are not genuine, but at least they are. And so you have to pay double the deficiency, and the recipient had to pay 2 cents postage to get that letter. And here's an example of a genuine use of the half-cent scroll on a business reply card. And now we're going to go back on to another fake. This time, in this case, is an OHMS double, not even, and we can see here that the holes are not cleanly punched through, and it's a definite indicator of a fake. The proper OHMS overprints on stamps will come through with very sharp, no little, I think the Florida election called them nibs, whatever they are. No, there's no nibs on these. These are no nibs on a proper OHMS overprint. But you can see how people can be fooled into thinking this is especially special because we've got a double overprint. Booklet panes with fake CDS. This is page 1. Here we're looking at one booklet pane, and we see these blue arcs, parts of blue arcs around these. It's been canceled. Here's another one, and another one, and another booklet pane, again with fake cancel, fake blue arcs. Here another one, up there, there. That's page 1. Here we're looking at page 2, another fake blue arcs, fake blue cancels everywhere. Another one down here. Another one here. Someone went to a lot of effort to take all these booklet panes and give them fake cancels. Here's a third page of them. You get the story. Here are some very clear ones. I bought these from FEH back in 2022. Advertised as very fine. There's this 27 in total. Very fine. And the X's are here, is just some of them that I've identified as not being genuine at all. So I contacted Frank. It took me a while. I was away and I didn't see these. And after 2 years, I talked to Frank and said, these aren't genuine. And certainly not very fine. And we came up to a fabulous agreement where I paid for the ones that were good and I kept the rest of them so I could keep them in the presentation. But watch out for fake cancels. And this is a good plug for Frank. I support Frank. I think he does excellent material. One of my favorite sellers. Here is another miscut stainless steel souvenir sheet. This is fake. And here's the genuine. It's pretty hard to tell why this is it miscut or not? No, this is actually cut from a full press pane. The person bought a full press pane. I forget how many actually souvenir sheets were on it. And he then cut them at an angle and then sells them as a miscut, high value miscut item. And therefore, here we can see the edges aren't as sharp. Whatever shear or knife or blade he used to cut it wasn't as good as the official printing. There's another fake. Here's an interesting one. I bought it knowing it was a fake. I was curious. This claimed to be missing the gold foil. Well, the gold foil was printed. We can see it here from this 4-color plus gold foil. And here we see the traffic signals. So, how is it that this stamp is silver and this one is gold? You look at it under UV light, you can see they've washed it with something that has removed both the tagging and the gold. But it's interesting that in removing the gold, it left the silver behind because the silver isn't listed as one of the paints. So it must have been I'm intrigued to understand the chemistry of how one could remove the gold shade from this without removing the silver. And that's a chemistry question that I don't know if I'll ever be answered, but I can't answer it today. Curious if anybody has any comments, how the gold can be converted to silver, or in the presence of bleach is the obvious choice, but not sure. Okay, so that was part 1, the fakes. There's a whole spectrum of them. We've gone through 13 examples, at least, different examples, different types. Now we're going to look at forgeries. They're a little bit harder, but The key here is the G in forgery comes from virgin material. Here's a mint no gum block of 4 of the number 4. But in genuine form, that would be very, very valuable. So on some paper that I couldn't identify, certainly not late paper, or wove. But if you look at each of the stamps, there's a dot here in the middle of the N, there's a mark in the E, there's another dot in the E here, and the 4th position, there's a dot in the margin. If I did some research, you could perhaps figure out where on the plate that image of the 4 stamps was taken by these different features. But it's clearly a forgery, and so that's it. For another example, virgin material, new paper. Here's a great forgery that's on gummed cardstock. And if you look at the genuine, the difference really comes in the eyes, very obvious in the eyes here. This is a very dark bullet for an eye. And here it's quite a different overall shape. The Oneglia forgery, we talked about that it was announced in the announcement of the presentation. We're going to look at particularly the Oneglia forgery tells. How can you differentiate the Oneglia beavers from genuine 3-penny beavers? Bought from the Sparks auction. Rassimo Oneglia, the Italian printer, produced early forgeries also of Newfoundland stamps. He was arrested for selling forgeries. His object was not really to make money, and I don't really want to. He's a fascinating history and the fabulous subject of other presentations, but we're looking here at the tells on this to differentiate this from the genuine. So what are they? Here's the forgery. This is a perforated version, so it's the number 12. I'm comparing it here with the number 4 genuine 3D pair. So here's the forgery and the genuine. In terms of the engraving of the beaver, I couldn't see any significant difference. The detail there in the beaver is wonderful. We look at the crown at the top, we do see a very slight difference. Up here, the difference between these two lines, this one here is a little closer. This middle frame line is a little closer to the outer one than here. Here we see a larger gap between the outer frame line and the inner frame line there. So there's a small difference up there. Now when we start looking at the lettering, there's where we start seeing a significant difference. In the genuine, we see very distinct serif, which is basically gone on the Oneglias. There isn't anywhere near the detail in the serif. Down here, look at the S, and this is on all the letters, the T's, everything. We're going to look at a couple more letters in the lower left corner on the 3. Basically, most of the serif is missing. Here we have very distinct bars on the bottom of the H's and the R's and the E's. And this one here is missing entirely, the vertical bar in the E. So the lettering is an obvious giveaway. It's also in the lettering in Canada. But the most obvious tell is very, very obvious. It's in the 3s, in the upper left corners, in all corners. We see there's a very different shape to the 3, and more importantly, by this. Mr. Oneglia got a little bit sidetracked and didn't bother doing any of the ornaments. Erasmo gave up on that, and he just put in horizontal grid lines. So if you're looking for a difference, just look at the grid lines in the corners, and you'll easily be able to tell if it's an Oneglia forgery or genuine. So there's your key tell, number 3s in the corners. Okay, but I was also curious to know how accurately Mr. Oneglia was in terms of reproducing the design. So I used the stamp analyzer, which is a tool that most often is used for measuring perforations of stamps, and it's a very, very accurate tool for measuring perfs. It also measures the centering very, very well, but I'm not looking at it in particular in this case. There's the perforations for this stamp, 1116, 1074, 1125, and 1074. Interesting. I won't talk about it or explain it, but that's an interesting phenomenon. I was looking more at what's down here, this measuring tape. And it has this feature that if you click that measuring tape box on this app, what you can do then is you can draw your line. And this is the forgery, and I did the genuine. And I can draw this line. And as I draw this line in the app, it tells me what the length is. This was 1.8 centimeters. On the genuine, it was 1.77. For all intents and purposes, in terms of my accuracy of putting down this dot within 3/100ths of a centimeter. Well, that's close enough. These are identical, I would call them. Horizontally, the frame was 2.24 and 2.26. Again, identical. And the inner oval, 1.60, 1.64. That could even be just with the drawing of the wet paper too. Dimensionally, Mr. Oneglia certainly he was true to genuine stamps. If anyone interested in the app, very, very powerful, as I said, for measuring perforations. I have another slide at the end. If you ask me questions about it, I can certainly give you a little more information about the app. It's okay. Here's a very crude lithographic forgeries of the very valuable $4 and $5 Jubilees. And there's the fake. And here's the genuine. Not even close. It's hard to even call that a fake, a forgery, because it's so bad. It might even be called just a reproduction. And again, this one's engraved. It's better. Often referred to as Pinelli forgeries. And here we are. So it's much better than this. We can see the difference in the lettering in particular. Again, the lettering is a tell for the difference between a genuine and a Pinelli or an Oneglia forgery here. So the next part we're looking at are counterfeit stamps. Number 404, the cameo, 4-cent cameo, some flags, more flags. We'll look at them all pretty quickly. Here's the 4-cent cameo. When the seller sold it, he said to me, this is the note he provided. Prior to 1990, very few counterfeits forged have been recorded. The Centennial was one exception. 4-cent Carmine and 4-cent Violet are also reported to be counterfeited, but no copies are known to be privately held. 1965, though, over 6 million counterfeit cameos, this one here, were seized, along with presses and other. One guy was charged and convicted, $1,000 and one fine, 1 day in jail. The issue was they seized them as mint stamps. And in the judicial system, as we learned from Ken Pugh, that you have to be making money from them. And not until you make money from them can you say you actually defrauded the government, and then your fines are much higher and you are charged with more. Collector put aside this example as a different shade, and then in 68, he checked his found and approved it to be the forgery. At the time, thought it was the only private one in hands. There may be other ones available. The key tell here in the genuine is a deeper red color. You can see the clarity there in the work. And the most important feature is the difference, and the easiest one to look for is in the eye. There's 4 very distinct vertical lines in the eye, and we don't see that on the counterfeit. There's a lot of dots around. The dots look pretty good, but so the color shades don't assume the color shades they've been distorted due to magnification in different papers. So it's the key tell here is the lines in the eye. Here's the flag, the counterfeit pane. And what we're looking at in particular is, again, the serif. On the counterfeit, it's very weak. And on the genuine, they're very sharp and strong. And we also look at tagging on the counterfeit. Oh, here's another counterfeit, again, with a very weak serif versus the genuine, which has a very strong serif on the bottom, so the letters. We also look at the counterfeit has no tagging here, while the genuine has got GT4 tagging. So the earlier counterfeits didn't do a very good job of tagging. That problem's been fixed though. Here's another counterfeit on the Canadian Tire commercial cover. If we look at the stamp carefully, we see a nice black line through it, and it's very raised and thick. I think we can all guess that that's from the product announcement glued onto a cover. This is a fascinating Maple Leaf counterfeit booklet. During the 20 years of storage I had it, I was doing this preparing this presentation, and I looked at it and I bent it slightly, and all the glue seems to have dissolved. The solvent that's used in the glue, now these are just basically mint no gum stamps. And there's no real booklet at all. So I sent an email to Leopold Baudet, his experience on his counterfeit booklets. Either the glue seeped through to the surface of the booklet or the ink itself became sticky. As a result, the face of the booklet stuck to the paper it was contact with. So he didn't want to do any more damage, so he didn't do any more testing. But there is a problem with these fake booklets in terms of the solvent that's used in the gluing of the stamps. There's a solvent used, and so here we have spot the differences for the Maple Leaf counterfeit booklet. Can you? Can you tell which is which? Keep in mind the Canada Post, like all big companies, are very, very particular about their brand or how their name is presented in writing. Looking in particular at the ends of the C's, there's a difference, and we look at the tops of the A's, flattened versus pointed. Yes, this is the genuine, and this is the counterfeit on the Maple Leaf booklet. There's also, on that same booklet, the genuine was done on a 5-color press. So when you're looking at the stoplights, you'll see the 5 colors. The counterfeit, they cheated. They did it a 4-color press, and the green was produced by the yellow and the cyan. And with any small registration error, you can now see the blue there and the yellow there and the green in the middle. So if you see registration error coming through on the bullets, on the traffic lights, then you know it's counterfeit. Even a minor registration makes it very obvious. Here are some more Lighthouse Definitive booklets, more modern. The booklet of 10, counterfeit. We're going to look at the middle one carefully. There we can see the counterfeit and the genuine. Very easy to spot under good magnification. Here they are, the counterfeits on a return to sender covers. Now, I don't know if they actually were returned because there's no return address. These are people presumably paying their property taxes or parking fines or something. And so I can only assume that the city of Montreal had to pay for these, paid the tax postage due. Here's another booklet of 10. Counterfeit, again, the same kind of effect. Very coarse printing and screening, and versus a genuine, a much, much better quality counterfeiting. Genuine printing, much better quality printing to start with. CBC did an interview, Richard Grattan in 2013. He talks about they checked 27,000 stamps from a high postal user. Maybe it was the city of Montreal. I don't know. Just under 1% of them had counterfeit stamps. So that's a significant number. 32 different stamps, different issues. Apparently, the problem is widespread across Europe and US. Now, the key here is that counterfeiting, when Canada Post went to peel and stick or self-adhesive stamps, these are much easier now to counterfeit because the paper is easier to source than gum paper. Die cutting is easier than perforating, and they're permanent, so they're good for many years. They don't and Canada Post shot itself in the foot financially when it went away from peel and stick, but certain customers like them better anyway. So that was the trade-off they made. And according to this interview, most Canadian counterfeits have been arrested, and they were in Quebec. And this is the Toronto Star from March 29, 2011. Here's a more modern counterfeit. And they're getting very, very good quality, including the quality of the printing, and they're including tagging. So here's an example of a cover with the counterfeit stamp together with the genuine. I put it through the mail addressed to yours truly. And I guess this then fills is I put the genuine because I didn't want to defraud Canada Post. This is what you consider to be a philatelic counterfeit because it was produced simply for a collection, not to defraud the post, to have this counterfeit stamp on cover. Fairly straightforward. Now we're going to go into the reproductions. Now the 12 penny Queen Victoria number 3. Another one of those. Here's the 12 penny Queen Victoria, a reproduction. This has actually been cut out from the souvenir copy commemorating the first annual edition of the Canada Specialized Postage Stamp Catalog in 1973. So that was an announcement, and that's been cut out, and it looks nice. It could work as a nice space filler on in an album page if you didn't have anything else. Here's a red one, again produced supposedly as a dye-proof. Well, not even that's a reproduction. Here's another reproduction, very poor quality printing for the early first Sense issues. Interestingly, though, here are the perforations. They weren't correct at all. But there was an interesting thing here, and then we look at the Jacques Cartier. They did get this Jacques Cartier, this little mark here between the O and the S, and the O and the S here. That is a plate flaw. That appears on all number 17. So whatever, they used a genuine number 17 to get this, but then they did mix up the axis for the grid lines for the printing dots. So, but they did copy this over. They used the proper stamp to get the image right, but they didn't quite that do right. Okay, that mark. Here we have, they did it on laid paper. Well, again, here we have another reproduction. Now we all recognize this as the Seaway invert. Canada's most popular variety. We can tell from now there's something going on down here. This fella, he sells them as replicas. He has 28 available. He sold 22 of them. One of them was to me for $1.85. He has to take 2 stamps, carefully cut out the center section of one, trim it, turn it over, and glue it back on top of the other one. All for $1.85? Okay. You can also get this reproduction on a first day cover. You had to be really careful because you could only do the first day covers where the cancel didn't actually touch the blue, because it wouldn't be right if the day of issue cancel touched the blue. So you can buy them as a reproduction. But we should also, since all the other ones we showed what genuine looked like, we're going to look at what a genuine is. It was the first, this issue was the first Canada-US joint issue. There's 2 panes of them, 200, 2 by 200. Unitrade reports 13 covers, 4 postcards. One of those 4 postcards is this one. And with a certificate, genuine in all respects. Interestingly, I don't forget if it's on this slide or the next one. No, I want to go back 1 slide then. If we look at the genuine, we see a distinct space between the Canada and the blue. Here on this sheet, on this genuine invert, the red is touching the blue, and I thought that was a tell that in order for it to be a genuine invert, the red had to be touching the blue, and that's not the case. There are examples of the genuine version where the red is not touching the blue. So there are 2 panes, 2 of 200, presumably in the 1 pane, we see the red touching the blue, and the second pane of 200, the red is slightly lower and better centered. So watch out for the invert. And here's the genuine copy. Now we're looking at part 5, miscellaneous. The 5-cent Beaver. 12-cent Thompson on cover, Private Crown overprints, Quebec overprints, stamp falling off, and fantasies. Yes, the fantasies are interesting. This one, I have no clue what it is. Someone took a lot of effort to print this up. It's printed, not hand-drawn. It's on a piece of scrap paper that looks like some announcement for a book just arrived, some arithmetic textbook. But what was interesting here, at the top we have a genuine stamp. And I lined up this sun that we see here and the genuine stamp. It just nicks the edges of the O here on both the genuine stamp and this fake replica, whatever we want to call it. And horizontally, it comes right through the top of the G, between the A and the G. Here we are. They put the sun, whoever did this, got the location very, very accurately. A lot of the other stuff is a little bit rough, but they certainly got the sun in the right spot. So I'm not sure how they did it. Interesting. This is a Philatelic Forgeries. They charge you at the forgery collecting market. I don't know. Virgin material for sure. Here's a Tom Thompson. This one you may recognize the stamp. Maybe not. I'm not sure. There's the stamp. The Tom Thompson. Painter. Wait. What's wrong with this stamp? It's actually two stamps, the bisects reunited. It's not forgery or fake. It's these two stamps that Rudy, a dealer who used to come to the Burlington Stamp Club and Hamlin Stamp Club, he's taken these two and cut them and pasted them together and matched them up perfectly. This horizon line here behind the trees looks really, really good. But that's exactly what they are. And it's simply, again, a philatelic fake. It's actual materials that have been modified to make some kind of philatelic item. That's all Rudy was doing. He's famous for doing these kinds of things. So, used in the mails, create a philatelic item. Here we have someone with some very, very strong loyalist support. They've managed to put a crown on Queen Victoria on this. I think it's illegal to do that, to put your own overprint on a stamp. But here we have a strong supporter of the monarchy, monarchists. We also have the exact opposite. We have the separatists in Quebec who decided that they were going to cross out Canada and put in Quebec and have Quebec stamps with the Quebec overprint. So we got both sides of the coin here. Here's a few more separatist overprints, Quebec Libre, on both the 8-cent centennial and the 8-cent caricature. Here we have an unusual postal marking, stamp fallen off, Hamilton. Initially short paid, double the deficiency, 34 cents, postage due. Again, this is Rudy's cover. And then marked stamp fallen off, Hamilton, Ontario. But it's a stamp, well, it's a mystery. I think he just glued a stamp face down, but in order, again, simply to create a philatelic fake. Some philatelic item. Not really important in defrauding Canada Post. So. Now we're going to do the last part of the presentation. We're going to look at some fantasy countries. They are, as I said, imaginary. They don't exist in real life. They have postal authorities that can issue stamps. We call them Cinderellas. And they can also issue first day covers, postal stationery, booklets, parcel post, souvenir sheets, varieties, all kinds of stuff. There is always a hope country. And they produce catalogs that mimic the Scott catalog and any other catalogs that are around. And what are the motives? This is the most interesting thing. Why would people produce these to Cinderellas for fantasy countries? Well, there's three distinct motives that I found. One is a political motive. We'll look at examples of one of each of these. An artistic motive and a philatelic. So we'll look at this. Here we have the political motive. for the country of the gay and lesbian kingdom of the Coral Seas. As part of external territory, in this section here off the coast of the east coast of Australia, it was established in 2004 to protest the law that restricted marriages to heterosexual relationships. And they said, no, we don't like that. So they raised their rainbow flag on the largest island, and the leader was Emperor Dale Parker Anderson. And here's their flag. It was dissolved in 2017 when Australia legalized same-sex marriages. But up until that time, they were issuing a wonderful stamps. Here's the source for the information on it. Here's a wonderful pane of 9 stamps, €2 each, face value. And here's one on cover, mailed to yours truly, with a wonderful postal code for heaven, 000. And the gay lesbian post office. The home country was, of course, Australia, as we can see from the Australian Post Office stamp. And here's their letter from the Parliament House, the gay kingdom of the Coral Sea. That's pretty clearly a political motive. Here we have an artistic motive for Savage Republic. And this is postal stationery that they produced, pre-printed already, addressed to Lynn Stamp News. Now, Lynn Stamp News is important because it actually was Jim Sizzle who was receiving these. He was one of the editors at Lynn's, who had a weekly column, or regular column on Cinderellas. So, but who was the Savage Republic? What was their artistic connection? The home country was USA. But the Savage Republic was a rock band. Oh, that should be band, not bank. My spelling. And founded by Bob Litcher. This is an incredible description. Savage Republic's visceral, cathartic blend of punk, surf rock, industrial music, psychedelia, soundtracks, and Middle Eastern nods would have no imitators. I think that's funny. And this is some of the album covers. He used it for artwork. Where does the artistic content come in? He used to produce stamps. He began hand letter pressing, printing record albums, and then he produced these Cinderella stamp designs for postal stationery, things that he was sending out. He used these creations on all the mail he sent out from his independent Project Records label, and then he did it for other bands too, and for other rock bands. Scritti Politti, I've never heard of them, both UK bands, again addressed to Jim Sizzle, and he's a true artist. He created these stamps for over 30 years. And finally, after, 31 years, he had a philatelic history tour. Stamp design and postal ephemera. He had an exhibition where all his artistic creations of stamps and postal history and whatever else he produced were on display. And this is from basically covering the period 1983 to 2014. So looks pretty fit. But here it's clearly he's doing this because of an artistic endeavor, artistic creation. And the final one, this is a philatelic motive, founded in 1970 by Gear Sorheim, initially on South Georgia Island, but that's actually an island, so they had to move it to the Antarctic mainland after 2 months. First president was Lamat Babi, and then there was a bit of and in the description about him, there was actually a bit of a revolution. There's a National Liberation Army, and then control went back. Babi's wife became the president in 74, evacuated in 76, resettled in 79. All of this is just curiously interesting. 1884, they joined the Antarctic Confederation of City Republics, the ACCR, and that celebrated its 50th, and Mevu celebrated its 50th anniversary in 2020. There's the sources of the information. Here are some of the Mevu stamps from the Ministry of Commerce, the Republic of Mevu, on Mevu government service. Here's 3.4 tanos is their currency. Postage, canceled, and with this beautiful CDS. Oh, it's a belt, I guess they call that one. And then, of course, the home country is Australia, so they still needed to put about $1.20 in Australian and Christmas Island stamps. So here's a cover. And canceled in Golden Beach, Queensland. And they also had first day cover, Republic of Mayview Government Post, official first day covers. These are the member cities in this ACCR. Mayview is up here, Port Maud. I'm not going to go through all of them. There's Latham. I picked Grahamia was over here. I can only assume that Grahamia was the guy who designed this, but his name was Graham. And and they published a stamp catalog. And this is their catalog for the ACCR, Confederation of City Republics. And does it look familiar? Does the format, layout look familiar to Scott and other catalogs? Well, this is just part of it. These are for all the different republics they have. And it's all in this catalog of postage stamps for the Antarctic Confederation. So, and I, on the one hand, we see this, and you see they have catalog prices for them. You can only imagine then that there would be some secondary market for buying and selling them if you wanted to finish your collection. But my instinct is that the designers of these did it more for a philatelic interest than for a financial motive. So I'll give them that it's a philatelic motive rather than philatelic motive, not financial. So some of the stamp themes featuring penguins, anniversary establishment, anniversary of the republics, the anti-solidarity forces, field post, because at that time Biafra was in the news for its famines, so they ended up having a field post in Biafra. There's a tourism conference in Port Maria, a resolution on the rights of future generations. This is a funny one. The establishment of the Antarctic Railways. Yep, that's worth a stamp for sure. Expo 98, a peace campaign, and the 10th anniversary of ISIS. Well, that's not the ISIS that's in the news now. It's the International Community of Independent States. So all of this information about the ACACR, you can go to Wikicon, the World Information Center for Imaginary, Created, and Oniric Nations. So if anyone wants information on any of these, this is just a small part of it. There's about another 40 other countries, all part of another organization, which I didn't include in this presentation. So, and I think we're coming up to 1 hour. If it is valuable, you can expect it to find it as a fake, modified actual stamp. Well, there's some question about that one, whether or not it's fake or not. There's no question about this. This is definitely genuine, but you will see them as fakes. You can also see them as forgeries. This one here on virgin material, and the Oneglia is a good example of that. And you can see it as a reproduction, poor quality, like we see on the Seaway inverts, although none of these three are. Okay, and with that, I'm finished the 1 hour presentation in 106 slides. Any questions?
Turn on my camera there. We'll give people a couple of minutes to type up their questions. And while we do that, Artie, I'm going to show you my stamps from the Grand Duchy of Flandrensis, of which I am a citizen. And not only a citizen, I am also the Minister of Digital Development and the Postal Service.
You said the Grand Duchy of what?
Flandrensis,
Okay, just a
Flandrensis.
sec. I'm gonna see if I have that one in my okay, well, okay, well, yes, okay, interesting.
So here's a on cover with a Belgian stamp because the Grand Duke, as he is entitled, is in Belgium.
Okay.
Anyways, so one of
So
my future projects for our nation is to create an album and a catalog of our stamps. But I probably won't get to that for some time. All right, the real questions. Any thoughts on the Heligoland reprints, and do you have a good reference document on how to do identifications?
no, I can't speak about the Heligoland reprints at all. I'm not familiar with that at all. I'm focusing on Canadian. I can tell a little bit about cuttery overprints and fake Qatar stamps, but nothing to do with. Sorry, I can't help you there. The
Okay,
best
our
is
next
a
question.
good powerful magnification. Powerful lighted 15 times magnification. And with the close-up images that you've seen, for example, in the presentation, are all done with a very, very simple magnifier from oh the leather store. Who the no the hobby store. There's a good hobby store. The 15 times magnifier, and I shoot through my camera, through my phone. So that's how those images were created.
Next question. Can you recall how you first learned of and about your first fake forgery, etc.?
Well, give me a minute to think about that one. Right off the top, I the it would be surprised if it wasn't. No, it wasn't the reproduction of the Seaway invert. I mean, that's pretty common. That's the one that jumps to mind first. Um, and I guess one of those first ones was the rebacked $1 Jubilee because it was up for sale on FEH and advertised as expertly rebacked. I said, "Oh, it looks real nice." That was one of the earlier ones too. Sorry, it's a fascinating subject, and I know there are people who are collectors who focus on forgeries and fakes, and I can see why it has appeal.
Next question is, Arnie, on your slide number 58, how
Yep,
many columns on that stamp sheet? You might need to scroll back.
yep, I will. Give me a second. 58.
All right, while Arnie is scrolling, I realized I should have said, what are the purposes of the Flandrensian stamps?
Oh, this is the
One is to raise funds because our organization has no money to run on other than
it-
selling things. But the other thing is
like counterfeit.
also for asserting our sovereignty. It's people in the micronation circles like to produce things that show others we exist in some tangible way. All right, Annie,
Okay,
Artie, have you
yep,
found
okay.
number 58?
Slide 58. That was the fake full pane of 100 of the 39-cent flags, and that was a 10 by 10 pane. So the 10 columns, 10 rows. I hope that answers the question you were asking.
I
It was
think so.
100 stamps on the pane.
I think so. All right, that looks like it. That's it for questions. Do you have anything else to add?
If anyone's interested in the Stamp Analyzer app, um, as I can say, it costs about $4 or $5 or $6 depending on whether you're buying U.S. or Canadian currency. You buy it in your app store, and it's a really, really powerful. I even sometimes use it when I see something on eBay. and I take that image and put it into the app. It doesn't necessarily measure the purse accurately, but it will tell me if the top purse and the vertical and horizontal purse are the same or different, because it oh so um so even for but then for measuring anything else, I mean it measures the it's I can't say anything. It's a powerful tool. It doesn't work very well on covers, or it works not doesn't because it there isn't enough of a contrast with the black background. But it'll measure three sides of my when I do a cover, it'll measure three sides, but when the scanner goes across, it doesn't create a shadow on the front leading edge. So it doesn't get a very good perf measurement from that side. But other than that, um, if you're interested, there's a lot of information about it on YouTube. Um, Let me just share one thing more. I'm going to share one. If we're finished here, then I'm going to share one more thing. Get to that slide first before I share it. Um,
While you're looking for that slide, Duncan says the app is $6.99 Canadian dollars today.
okay. Yep. And
Ross
hit
says,
share.
check the 39-cent coil. It's 10 by 11 on his sheet.
Oh. Oh, okay. That's interesting. Here we are looking at this slide here. So this is the app you search for in the App Store Raytheon stamp analyzer. It's a Canadian. Eastern Ontario, Eastern Quebec, because the website is a email address is characteristic of Quebec people. And you can, this is the icon that you're looking for. There are other things that will come up, but look for that icon. If you want to see a video on it, go to the YouTube search field and type in Arnie Janson Stamp Analyzer in the search field. And this is what it looks like. And there's already 5,500 views on it. And that was in 2 years. So it's a if you're interested in measuring perfs, very powerful tool. And oh, I didn't want to stop sharing there. I'd want to continue sharing just a sec. Go back to that again. And we're going back to slide 58. I thought it was 10 by 10.
Everyone get your counting glasses on.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're right. It is 11. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10. Yes, 10 by 11. Thank you for correcting me. I went through it too quickly. I didn't look at the actual. I looked at a small image of it and counted up. Yeah, it is 11 by 10. Thank you.
Okie dokie. Thank you, Ross and Gilles. One question, would local post labels fit in these stamps? What do you think?
I don't know if anyone's created local post labels for. No, I don't. I know. I wouldn't call them Cinderellas. Um, no, local post. Oh, you meaning the strike mail ones, the British Columbia people who put those out? No, I think they were. I wouldn't consider them fantasies because they actually served a purpose and they were used. No, I don't know where I'd fit. I think no, I'd be interested. That could be a good top. I wouldn't consider them fakes, forgeries, or counterfeits, or no. That's a private business, and if you collect, for example, if you collect FedEx envelopes, well, I could consider that to be in the category of FedEx envelopes. If you collect FedEx per year later envelopes, they're a private business using some kind of postal marking on a letter. I
All right,
would
we've got another
put all the
interesting
post
question
labels
for
like
you.
that.
Another interesting question. On slide 91, could the white stamp be due to being printed on the gum side?
Yes, it's possible. Rudy did that. And I have some of them in my collection but then in that case, he typed under the stamp, printed on gum side. Um, so I'm not sure how he created that piece of salvage with the stamp, blank stamp. I'm not sure how he created it, but on the ones he did it, I can actually show one of those. I think I can end the show now. And that was a centennial. Okay, another question.
There's a
Try and
question. I'm not sure exactly what it has to do. What are the locals on the south shore of Nova Scotia called?
the Port Hood provisionals. Are those is that what are you referring to? The locals, meaning the Port Hood provisionals? They would certainly
Perhaps.
qualify as proper. Um,
Jean says that she collected some local post stamps during COVID. These are distinct from private post carriers, for example, in Germany, that sell stamps and provide a real service.
okay, I'm not quite sure. Um,
So local posts include Canvey Island, Lundy Island, Callback, if I'm
oh
saying that
yes,
correctly.
I've seen them.
Oh, that's on the south shore of Nova Scotia. I'm getting some geography lessons here.
I'm gonna share my screen again here. Here's an example of another Rudy cover where he did actually put um, 6 cent stamp printed on gum. And this is the second one here. So he did do it. Whether or not the one that we looked at on the cover, I don't know.
Here's a question. What authorities exist to assess a stamp's authenticity?
Well, the obvious one for Canadian is Vincent Gray's Green Foundation, Research Foundation. But there are others who will do it. And sometimes some of the eBay sellers, in particular one in Montreal, he'll say comes with the certificate, but he's selling his own product with his own certificate. So it doesn't quite pass the smell test, in my opinion. There are, but by far and away, the only one that collectors and serious collectors would use would be VGG. At least in North America, there's the Royal Philatelic has, and in the UK has offers expertising services, and there are various companies in the United States that will offer expertising services. But for Canadian stamps, it's VGG is the first one that comes to mind. Very good. They have an excellent policy. It works very, very well. You submit your stuff, and they'll either give you a green certificate, which means it's genuine, or a pink certificate, or they'll issue you a no opinion. And when it comes to those imperf singles, their rule is very, very simple. We do not give any opinions on imperf singles because we really can't tell. And so,
Gilles
oh,
adds that
I can
Ken
see that.
Pugh and Richard Gratton are also individuals
Yeah,
who can
yeah,
give some good opinions. Do you have any thoughts about expertising for European stamps?
no.
Okay, all right. All right, well, we're well past time. Al, do you have anything else to add?
Uh, Thank you very much, Arnie. What an excellent presentation. I think it's a great reminder for all of us to be able to take a really close look at our all of our stamps and just to check for those mysterious fakes, forgeries, counterfeits. It's a very, very interesting subject matter. Arnie, and you do a fantastic job as usual. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to everyone that signed in tonight. We must, before we close, we'd like to acknowledge the lands that we're on, and we'd also like to thank Longley Auctions. So please visit longleyauctions.com, and maybe you can find some postal history, some genuine postal history for your collection. And thank you for joining us again. Please join us next time for Stamp Panels, the Harris Walsh Specialized Canada Catalog with Robin Harris and Mike Walsh. Thank you very much, everyone.